with public safety. We felt the importance of bringing in key stakeholders and just having a conversation around one, what are some of the facts? We want to be data driven, so we want to maintain as much objectivity as possible, and also based on the data trends, where some of the solutions and programming and strategies that are currently being implemented to be able to as a form of the deterrence to the spike in crime, particularly in our community. We want to be CB12 specific, so meaning Washington Heights and Inwood, and any other questions or concerns, we're gonna leave it towards the end. So we're gonna start off with the same way I was in the flyer. So we're gonna start off with DA Bragg, followed by 33rd Precinct, followed by 34th Precinct, and then we'll open it up to questions and engage in a conversation. Is everybody cool with that?
Yep. Yeah, sounds good.
Eliasel, do you want to say some words before we begin?
That's fine. That's fine. That's what we agreed on, Domingo.
Eliasel, you want to say some words before we start? Eliasel Bueno, chair of CB12.
I'd just like to personally thank the best of everyone's muted. I hear people in the back. So whoever's in charge of the host, can you please mute everyone?
All right.
Yeah, Domingo, I'd also like to add to your excellent comments that I
All
hope
right.
this let's an ongoing dialogue.
Yeah, perfect. Barbara, let's start off with the chairs and let him begin. Thank you.
So I'd like to take this opportunity to say thank you for the people who organized this. It is very rarely we get to see Andrea and Natalie and the current DA together in the same space. So I'd like to give you guys personally accolades for doing that and for listening. On a professional level, I've spoken to you in the past, and you guys have been extremely open to our ideas and suggestions. So I just want to also say to our board members and members of the public, take this opportunity to ask specific and functional questions that are directed to what we're trying to accomplish. If there's anything that you may want to do or say, do it offline, please, so we can take this opportunity and benefit the most from. So thank you, Domingo, for that. Welcome, each one of you.
Thank you, Eliasel. So as previously stated, this is a conversation where we will prioritize the public. So once the presentations are over, we will hold stack. Danielle, if you could help me with stack. So as we start seeing individuals raise their hands, there's a raise hand feature. We will start being able to maintain stack that way, just so we all are in the same page when it comes to that, all right? And I know, Barbara, you have some comments before we start. Okay, but you got your hand up though, Barb. All right, got you. So
committee members should speak first after the presentations.
Well, we'll prioritize the public. Let's make sure that community board members, let's make sure that we raised our hand and let's engage in a dialogue. But right now it's a public forum, so let's make sure we get the public in.
Sure.
I'll start off with DA Bragg.
Great, thank you so much. Great to be here virtually with y'all. Your neighbor slightly to the south in Central Harlem. Spent a lot of time up in your neighborhood, and as you all know, well, if you don't know, I should say we have our Washington Heights office. I see Jocelyn Minaya, who heads that office on, and we've got a lot of other folks from the DA's office. So really here to answer your questions and engage. Happy to be here for our partners in law enforcement, the NYPD. And I just figured I would start by talking about some of our broad priorities at the DA's office, and then really try to leave as much time as possible for questions. So our number one overall priority is gun violence, borough-wide, and particularly in the northern part of the island, we've seen significant gun activity. So that is a pressing issue. Earlier this year, I appointed an executive for gun violence prevention who's a career prosecutor, who was head of the criminal division at the Attorney General's office, and is really coordinating our many efforts here. So we are, doing, we've done, sadly, a good number of gun possession cases this year, but his role is really to coordinate and connect the dots. He and I were actually together with our violent crime enterprise unit earlier, looking and focusing on gun trafficking, looking and trying to take, his task is trying to take the cases about one gun, which our ADAs are individually focused on, and focusing and turning those into guns about cases about, 5, 10, 15, 20 guns, and really focusing on where the guns are coming from. So we have, a lot in the pipeline on that we're working on. We're also focused on the, I would say, emerging, although it's been emerging for a while, growing, maybe the better word, issue of ghost guns. Had a very significant sentencing of someone who had 11 high capacity magazines and also had paraphernalia saying they wanted to do harm to law enforcement. We did that case about a month ago. We're working every day with kind of state, local, and federal partners on our gun violence strategic partnership on these issues. So gun violence is really driven by a relatively small number of people, drivers of violence. And so we're laser focusing in on that population. And that's sort of our sort of, I'd say, top priority. We are also, just will briefly mention sort of other things that really kind of have jumped up in terms of numbers during the pandemic. Domestic violence, which I find is something that we don't talk about enough. That's borough-wide, particularly also in Upper Manhattan as well. And there's a real overlap there where in our gun work, in addition to the gun trafficking, the gun possessions, and the ghost guns, we're focusing on the overlap between gun violence and domestic violence, and really prioritizing getting guns out of the hands of those who have a history of domestic violence. We've really seen it. I mean, domestic violence complaints are up 21% in Manhattan since 2019, and so that's an additional initiative in the violence crime bucket. So guns, domestic violence, and the violence crime bucket. Also hate crimes. We announced an initiative earlier this week where we're expanding our unit. We have 2 executives focused on hate crimes. We're expanding our language capabilities and are really doubling down. We've seen, again, the theme here is what has increased during the pandemic and driving our resources to the type of offenses that have increased during the pandemic. So that's what we're doing in terms of violent crime and priorities. A second type of matter which we're prioritizing, which for those of you who don't know, I previously was the chief deputy at the New York State Attorney General's office, and 2 categories of work which we prioritize there, which I'm hoping to sort of replicate here in the DA's office. Is the first is wage and hour, and the second is tenant harassment. So the DA's office, we've long had a really great kind of construction fraud task force that's dealt with worker safety and wage issues. In that context, we're looking to expand that to all areas. When I was at the Attorney General's office, we did a number of kind of retail fast food cases in Washington Heights, where, quite frankly, people who were working hard and were not being paid, they were being paid a low wage, and we're focusing on criminally low wages. In that sort of category of sort of standing up for everyday workers, everyday New Yorkers, we're also prioritizing harassment cases. We know with the recent end to the eviction moratorium, we're seeing a lot of housing instability and a number of folks who are kind of being harassed out of their homes. So those are 2 new initiatives, which not something that really necessarily we think of traditionally through a DA's office, that we think really will help with neighborhood stability. I would say the sort of last thing I wanted to raise up and just try to leave a lot of time for questions and answers is what we've seen sort of on that, what I would call in the disorder and the sort of commercial theft, shoplifting, commercial robbery. We've been working kind of hand in hand with the NYPD, pairing our data. It's not, it's a sort of maybe seems like an inapt comparison to gun violence, but what we've seen is the data shows that a relatively small number of people are driving. The sort of sense of really what we see sort of in the streets, we think is manifesting primarily in kind of the shoplifting phenomenon. So we paired our data with the NYPD data and been working for the last couple of months at the highest levels of the NYPD with Deputy Commissioner Chauncey Parker and others, focusing on really the population of folks who are repeatedly engaging in conduct and coming up with a plan for those repeat. And I'm happy to go into more detail about that. Also, they're looking at programs in other neighborhoods, Times Square, as we think of the Times Square Alliance and the red uniforms, looking to bring neighborhood navigators, so folks who are, on our streets, helping people who, many folks who are doing this are in distress, whether it's mental health or something else, and helping to connect them with services. So that's a significant priority, because I think we're all seeing that, feeling that on our streets. And I know our officers from our conversations and our small businesses, and by extension, all of us are sort of feeling that. So we're at the ready. We have sort of a plan we're launching next week, really focused on the repeat conduct, and also focusing on how we can, in the context of a case, connect people with services they need. So I leave it there, and I thank all the folks. I think we've kind of robust participation, seeing the numbers here. So it's great to be in dialogue with so many of our neighbors, and look forward to the question and answer portion.
Thank you so much. Next, we have the commanding officer in the 33rd precinct.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. For those of you I haven't met, my name's Brian Natali. I'm the CO of the 33rd precinct. Again, kind of like the DA said, I'm going to leave a lot of time for Q&A. I'll be very brief. You mentioned data, and you mentioned Washington Heights specific, right? So crime in New York City is up across the board when you look at the city as a whole, and it's up substantially. It's up almost 44% in New York City. Shooting incidents too, up almost 10% in New York City. When you look at the crime in this precinct, which is 155th Street to 179th Street, we're up a little over 2%. So in the realm of crime control, so there's 77 precincts throughout the city of New York. The 33rd precinct right now is the third best in the city in terms of crime control. There's only 2 other precincts in the city doing better statistically, you mentioned data, at controlling crime than we are. So very, very positive stuff coming into the year, especially on the, we had kind of a violent year last year. All of the indicators that I see in this precinct are very positive. Like I said, the crime, domestic violence is down nearly 25% in this precinct. Gun recoveries are up nearly 125% in the confines of this precinct. So there's a lot of really, really good work going on. There are a couple of very specific crime trends I just want to mention briefly that I think the public can actually help with, right? One is I actually just met with the media a couple of weeks ago. They're going to air it, I think, on NBC News. Running vehicle GLAs, and I know the inspector in the 3-4 has this problem too. It's a very, very preventable crime, and it's up tremendously this year, where individuals are just leaving their car running, mostly up on Broadway, Audubon, Amsterdam, and they're being stolen at an alarming rate. So if we can get a little awareness out there to stop doing that, or maybe just lock your car. We're not focusing so much on the double parking. We get it. It's Manhattan, but please don't leave your vehicle running and unlocked. You definitely want to lock that car. We're seeing quite a few, and this is specific to my precinct now, pickpockets lately in the train station. We're working hard on it, but it's another crime that is somewhat preventable. So, if we have belongings, just don't put them in your back pocket. If you have a purse, don't leave it behind you. Try and keep everything in front of you. And that's something you can do proactively. So ultimately, I'm kind of going to stop there. I'm looking forward to the Q&A. There's a lot of positive things going on in this precinct right now. And I look forward to hearing from all of you.
Thank you. Next up, we got the commanding officer in the 34th precinct.
Good evening, everybody, and thanks for having me. Like Captain Natali saying, crime throughout the city is a sort of a pattern we're dealing with this year, the police department. In the 3-4, a positive thing that we're seeing is that we're up in arrests, and we're also we're getting those guns off the street like I expect to. Currently, we have an NST team here in the 3-4, and we have a public safety team. For those of you who don't know, the NST team it is the new rollout that replaced anti-crime by the mayor. It is a team that has specific uniform, and they go out there in high crime areas, and their main function is to deter any street violence and any other crime they see. Those guys rolled out around 2-3 weeks ago. They're doing very well. They did make a stolen vehicle arrest. They did stop some robberies from occurring. So they're a good team out there. I think it's a very positive, so far, step in the right direction. We are experiencing those GLAs that Captain Natali was talking about. 95% of our GLAs, stolen vehicles, are vehicles left running, double parked running. So we try to get out there and let everybody know, do not keep your car double parked running. Don't think because you got a key fob in your pocket that the car can't be stolen. So that is one of the things that we are having an issue with. I've noticed that in the last 2-3 weeks, it's trending down. Awareness is definitely out there about it. Another thing that we experience here in the 3-4 is robberies. This year, we're up around 48% robberies, 64 versus 43, but we have excellent case clearance. Robbery arrests year to date are 19 robbery arrests. So, you know, we have a great detective squad. Cops are very sharp out there. They're getting to the jobs on time. Our response time is excellent. So these are some of the issues that we deal with as far as crime. With quality of life, we're always going to have the same issues with noise, the dirt bikes, ATVs, and fireworks when the weather starts to warm up. So that it continues to be a challenge with the dirt bikes and ATVs. We start seeing them. My NCOs went out there. They made they seized eight bikes just in the past 2 weeks and made 1 arrest. They're a very, very difficult arrest to make. So I applaud them on their efforts, and they'll continue to make those arrests and gain intel on where these guys are coming in and where they're congregating and parking. So those are some of the issues going on in 3-4. So, you know, we'll see what other questions we can answer, and hopefully we can appease when anybody's questions.
Thank you. So the goal of this portion of the agenda is to basically engage in a dialogue. So we want to hear from community members, but at the same time, we're looking for alternatives. We understand that the community is facing real issues, but let's see common grounds to be able to start building back a sense of community post-COVID, but at the same time, understanding that there will be some individuals that have a lot of frustrations that have accumulated over a certain period of time. So with that being said, let's go over to some of the queue. Whoever has a question, just use the raise hand feature. And I give it over.
First or no?
Yeah, take over. Yeah.
Oh, and I was just gonna ask, are we doing board members first or the public?
As people raise them, go for it.
I should be first.
Go ahead, Danielle. So,
well, I actually had a question, but I didn't know if you wanted to do community members first.
Let's do one and one. Let's do a board member and a community member. I think that should be fair enough.
Okay, so I'm gonna ask. So thank you to our speakers for joining. So I have a question, I guess it's for DA Bragg, but also for the officers. So it's my understanding that your work goes hand in hand and that, you know, the DA's office or the officers are arresting people. The officers, sorry. The DA's office are, sorry, I'm getting my thoughts together. The officers are attaching charges to a particular person, and then the DA's office is going ahead and prosecuting those charges, deciding what's going to stick. But in some ways, it seems like the work is sort of opposing in that, DA Bragg, you mentioned that you're trying to sort of keep people out of jail, stabilize communities, consider things like mental health. So how does that work when in some way the two agencies are sort of working to keep the public safe and, you know, get people who are committing crimes off the street, but you also want to try to stabilize communities and keep people out of jail and not just arrest people, but also think about, you know, programming and education and vocational skills and things of that sort. So I just wanted to know if you could speak to all of that.
Sure, I'm happy. You said my name first. So I'm happy to take a crack at it. Look, I think what you just said, it's an all of the above. And maybe I'll give you an example. The police commissioner invited me to one PP, I think it was about a month ago, and we were talking not Washington Heights and Inwood, but about 125th Street and some of the sort of disorder and there's this very significant issues, very similar to what you're having in Washington Heights on the street. And the premise of the meeting was we needed to all be together, and we weren't going to arrest and prosecute our way out of all of it. And we had folks there from sanitation and from buildings and from other city agencies to collaborate. And so I think, and I don't want to speak, for the police department and certainly not for the commissioner, but I think there is some broad consensus that there's types of things that we need to prosecute and that use traditional resources on. And then there's also categories of things for which the services and also really other levers. I think, frankly, one thing that emerged from that is that the DA's office and the police department is the frontline public safety, response. Them investigating and us prosecuting are often called upon to do things that are not, someone is, homeless, or someone is, going through withdrawal on a street corner, and trying to bring in other city agencies and coordinate that is something that I think we've all talked about. And we really are, I think, and I'll let some of the folks who've been doing this a long time talk, but I think we really are coordinating a lot these days. We had a meeting with all of the COs from Manhattan North about a month ago with Chief Obey. Before that, we had a meeting with the COs from kind of upper Manhattan. And so I think that there's a high level of coordination. I mentioned the Small Business Alliance in talking about what we're doing on shoplifting and commercial robbery. That was a collaboration at the highest levels with, Deputy Commissioner, the head of Intel, working. I was in touch with the police commissioner earlier today. So I think we have a high level of coordination. Does that mean we're going to agree on everything? No, I would not presume to say that, but I think there's, focus on, from my perspective, really using our resources on folks who are doing harm, whether that's, in the form of, the gun violence or domestic violence, or people who are repeatedly, engaging, in retail theft, but also at the same time realizing that there's populations of particularly the retail theft that we can connect to services, and that means they won't come back versus sending them to Rikers for a month, knowing that they're coming right back to the same location and doing the same thing and repeat. So I've spoken for my half of it, but want to hear from the NYPD as well.
I can speak on behalf of the 3-4 precinct. We have a very good partnership with the district attorney's office. I think we all have the similar goal, is to make the neighborhood and the community safer for not only residents, but business owners. And we have been working very well with the ADA's office. I didn't really feel the difference or the change since we have our new district attorney. So I think the partnership has continued this similar. And our goal is to get the most violent people off the street. And I think that that's ultimately the goal of the mayors as well.
Thank you. 33rd, any response to the question?
Hey, I think you kind of hit it all in terms of answering the question. Justin Tatham, he's my liaison at Danny, as well as Jocelyn, and we talk constantly. So the relationship it's definitely there, and it's a positive one.
Thank you. Who do we have next, Danielle?
Steve Feldheim. Or sorry, did you want to also complete the panelists, or you said go back and forth, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so Steve Feldheim.
All right,
Hi,
Steve.
good evening, everybody. Thank you for calling on me. First, I'd like to address my comments to DA Bragg. I just want to say thank you. We have one of your most amazing staff between Jocelyn Mania and Ellie Silvestri running our Upper Manhattan stuff. We have a great relationship with them, and they do amazing work. So thank you for keeping them up there, and it's a major asset to your unit. My question to you is, I understand what you're saying as far as keeping a lot of all the programs that you're trying to get people off the street, but a lot of complaints that we have up in the 3-4 is package theft. I know it seems minor, but like a lot of people could order stuff from Amazon and say we didn't get it and get replaced, but that family member that sends you a priceless heirloom that somebody steals a package and realizes there's nothing that's going to be good for them, they throw it away, and that cannot be replaced. So, I mean, the one thing is recidivism. We have people getting arrested 40, 50 times for the same thing. And yes, some of these programs, interventions could work. What happens when you do your interventions and they just keep coming back to it? It's an easy theft. It's an easy target. And that really affects people. The quality of life issues of some of these what are small, to some people, they're really important. And how do we, even with the drugs and stuff like that, at what point do we say that what the programs we're doing is not working, they don't care, and they keep going back to the same crime? At what point do we stop really prosecuting them and holding them accountable for it, and then realizing that the programs aren't working, that we're trying to help them to keep them out of jail?
Thanks for the question. First, also thanks for the compliment to Jocelyn and Elliot. They're doing a great job, and I'm ecstatic to be on the same team as them. Look, the question you asked is something we've been asking, and I thank you for focusing on the package theft, because it's not been, we've been spending more time hearing a lot more about the retail theft, and so would love to maybe connect you with Jocelyn and Ellie offline and talk to the CEOs about maybe doing in a package theft the same thing that we're talking about doing in the retail theft area, which is exactly mindful of what you're saying, kind of focusing on the people who are repeat offenders, where appropriate, offering services. But this is not sort of people have said, is this discretionary? Is it optional? It's like, no, you've got to do the program, and if you don't in the program, then we have more traditional like incarceration as a recourse. And for folks who are repeat offenders for a program's not appropriate, there's plenty of cases where we're going straight to incarceration. So we are doing it. We're mindful of it. I will say we have not been kind of holistically focused on package theft as we have been on kind of retail commercial theft. So happy to kind of have you focus our attention there more so. Another thing that we're also doing is all programs aren't built equally, and so assessing the efficacy of them, because they're not, and things aren't working, and we're not going to keep on beating our head against the wall if it's not working.
All right, thank you.
Next is Faye.
Yes, good evening, everyone. First of all, I just want to thank, our chairman, Chair Esteves, and Chairman Bueno, and all, my colleagues, and of course, commanding officers, Natalian from the 33rd, and also commanding officer Piri Andrea for, being with us. And of course, our district attorney, Mr. Bragg, thank you so much for, joining us in this important conversation. So I, as a representative mostly of the, youth, that's what I represent, or I feel associated the most besides the police department. So one of the questions that I really have, I personally, just to begin, feel that in certain way, police are, their hands are tied, in the sense that the police may conduct arrests in certain individuals, but then guess next, you're going to see that individual go out of jails in a few days because of the bail or whatever reason. But it's like a slap in their in their hands, and that's it. So my question actually is to DA Mr. Bragg. What is your take in the idea of having less legislators to give more power, or to increase the power on judges, so they can actually put this, they should take a stronger measure when it comes to this criminals that have, continually, it's like a revolving door, committed the same crime and letting them go. So what is your position on that? Are you in agreement of allowing legislature to increase the power to judge, to exercise that? Because is that happen, which is what the community actually want, as well as myself, is to make the that definitely will empower police officers and make their job a lot easier, and the community will be safer. So I would like to hear from you. What is your position on that, sir?
Yeah, so I would have to kind of see the specific legislation. I know we just had the budget bill passed, and we had some tweaks in that. I find that these things vary from judge to judge. There are times when we seek bail under the current law and it's not granted. There are other times when the law doesn't allow us to. And so I think it's I don't think that there's a kind of a silver bullet, if you will, at least not one that I've seen. We've just kind of finished the cycle. I don't think we'll see more legislation coming. And so I think we've got to continue to do what we're doing in terms of building rigorous cases. And I think certainly when I look at the sort of the data and the kind of cases we're building, and like I said, we going to our courts, I think we've got tools at our disposal now, and we're using them. And I think and I hope that you'll start to see the impact of some of the things we've been doing differently, on the streets. But I'll leave kind of the legislation to the legislating to the legislature, and as various proposals come up. We'll weigh in on them, but in the abstract, it's sort of, kind of hard to respond. More so than just saying that, I do think it sort of varies from judge to judge, and also from, type of conduct to type of conduct, and that we think we've got, tools at our disposal, as I sort of described, in the kind of retail theft, what we plan to be doing in terms of, going forward and highlighting and spotlighting and being at the ready for people who are repeatedly doing this conduct. So I think that plan is going to be an example of sort of how we can operate with, within this framework. And hopefully you'll see a real impact soon.
I want to thank you. And before I exit, I just wanted to say last, with the permission of the chairman, Esteves, that I would
let's keep it to the point, because there's other people that also want to.
I'm not going to say nothing different. All I'm going to say is just a comment and thank you. It's just I would like to see more conversation, bringing the legislator with the police and Mr. Bragg together, so we can, continue this conversation. Thank you.
We also have to bring the community, Faye, because as we understand in the past, mistakes were made because the community was left out. So this is something that a lot of stakeholders have to come together and address collectively. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, I would just look, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, please.
No, I would just say that, like, I think that, to be perspective and sort of, where we are, we're having the conversation now. And I think, being specific, and a lot of this stuff is sort of, we've seen when we sit around the table. I'm thinking about the meeting we had with the COs a month ago, and specifically kind of talk about folks who are engaging in whatever the conduct may be repeatedly. When we're putting our heads together, there's strategies, that we can deploy, as law enforcement police, as law enforcement prosecutors, as community, under, without sort of, I'm not saying we don't bring the legislation to the table, but I think kind of talking about what we can do right now in the here and now is very important.
Thank you.
Thank you. Danielle?
AJ?
Unmute. Hi, thank you all so much for doing this. I have a very specific question that pertains to Upper Fort Washington Avenue. As I'm sitting here, I'm hearing the drag racing on Broadway, which is pretty bad even at this hour. On Fort Washington, and I've got to compliment our community officers up in the 34th, because they've been great, but they're pretty helpless to do much about the significant drag racing up here without speed bumps and without the DOT's input. And I'm wondering, how hard is it really to get speed bumps in around Margaret Corbin Circle, as well as on Margaret Corbin Drive? Because this is not only a residential area, it's a park area. And the dangers with, I mean, using these, these ton weapons as a source of joyriding is, I mean, it's really frightening.
Yeah.
So-
Thank you for your question.
I mean, I can answer on behalf of the 34th precinct. We did have a walkthrough with DOT, and we suggested that they should put the speed bumps there, but they have a policy with bus routes, and that was the issue. Our plan for Margaret Corbin Drive is to hopefully get some metal up there to hopefully close down some of the easy access to that circle. That's something that really just started dusting up this year. My guys are up there actually over the weekend, and it's like a cat and mouse game. And we do not chase motorcycles or dirt bikes or these cars that speed away from us. We do not go into vehicle pursuits because we find that the people that try to flee us will not be careful about it. They'll jump up on sidewalks. We had a situation last night where that was similar, where we went to go stop a vehicle up on Margaret Corbin Drive. It was a orange BMW, I believe, and they almost struck the two officers that got out the car to get in front of them, and they popped the curb and took off. So we will not chase, but we will do our best to make it more difficult to be up there, more presence up there, get some metal up there, some of our metal barriers that get in the way of vehicles actually being able to set up there. So that is definitely a challenge that we saw dust up this year. And we handled it the similar ways in other locations. On Dykeman towards La Marina, we had a problem over there. I'm assuming that we're going to have that problem again this year. That's why I already have it set up that we're going to put a Dykeman auto over there. And we also see it sometimes, it was occurring on the Speedway on 207. That Speedway's closed, it's fenced in. So I feel like we don't need the resources over there. So that's a continual challenge. And we'll continue to make it more difficult for these people to congregate and do their donuts and and bring their motorcycles up in those locations.
Yeah. So up next we have
OC.
Yeah, OC. No, Eliasel had texted me prior to OC's hand up. So we'll have Eliasel, and then we'll go around. We can't hear you. Your audio's bad. All right. We can't hear you. OC, you could go ahead. We'll come back to you, Eliasel.
Okay. I know that in the past, the precincts used to have like checkpoints at the exit to Riverside, from West Side Highway to Riverside, and also on the 207 bridge. I'm sorry, not 207 bridge, Broadway Bridge on 219 and Broadway. And I think it's something that you guys should look at more seriously, doing it on a regular basis. I understand that needs to be like a surprise kind of checkpoints. But I feel that it's really important because 2 weeks ago, we had probably 60 or 70 riders just driving on Sherman Avenue. That's a favorite street, and disregarding any traffic regulation whatsoever, not wearing helmets. And you know all of that. I don't have to repeat what you already know, but what is the planning on really expanding on that type of, initiative?
So I can continue to answer that question for the 34th precinct. So we do the checkpoints on 207 and 181, and we're very successful with it. We also done checkpoints on 204 Street and Dykeman to deter some of the driving around all night, especially by the nightclubs and some of the motorcycles and ATVs that come into the area. When we do a checkpoint, you will not stop motorcycles and ATVs. They will cross the other side of the street. They will jump up on the sidewalk. So that hasn't been what we've done. What our policy is when we see a roving band of such motorcycles and dirt bikes, is we try to get aviation up and we try to follow them and see where they end up parking their vehicles. And we try to get the intel of where they're storing these vehicles so that we can try to confiscate these vehicles. We have an idea where they're coming from. And so we're right now working with Intel to try to get search warrants and so forth to confiscate and get some of these vehicles off the street. But the checkpoint is probably more effective to deterring the four-wheel vehicles, you know, the sports cars, the BMWs, the Mercedes flying through 207th Street, 181. So we'll continue to do those checkpoints. We do joint checkpoints with Highway, with the state police. We do them on our own. We just did a big tow operation last Friday. We were very successful. We took about 15 vehicles off the street that had those paper plates, and we made numerous arrests. So the effort is there, and we're going to continue that effort. And if we can't stop it, we're definitely going to deter it from coming up to Washington Heights.
All right, thank you. And by the way, for folks asking questions, we also have representatives from Parks as well. So if there's any questions focused to Parks, feel free to ask them as well. Who's next, Danielle?
Tatiana Mahoney.
Oh, great. Thank you. Thank you so much for this opportunity. My question is regarding the sale of cannabis, or edibles in particular, and vaping products around schools in Inwood. Dykeman Park, 204 Street, all the way from 10th Avenue, all the way to Broadway, 207 and 9th Avenue. And my question is if we can get more patrolling around dismissal and arrival to our schools. We have a lot of kids with special needs. I represent a school, and we do see a lot of these people selling with their whiteboards in very colorful. They're really like vultures after the kids, and make it disguised as chocolates, as you know, it's very colorful. They're vaping products, they all have flavors, and it's very attractive to minors. And like I said, we do have a lot of children with special needs. We do have a middle school and a high school, and we do see that that they're being targeted. Again, this is around Dykeman Park and all the way 204 Street, also by the post office, and you know, I'm representing Inwood Academy for Leadership, right by St. Jude's. We don't even have a crossing guard, but that's okay. Our parents are always there. But the issue really is the sale of these illegal products to minors. And if there is any way that they could be put like you know, like you know, I don't know how to say that. I mean, if I see families who are afraid of selling fruit on the street because they're gonna get, you know, they don't have a license. But these people who are selling marijuana, they're not bothered. They're just putting their tents and they're selling with their boards, no problem. So what can we do about this?
And thank you, Tatiana, for raising that question. Also, feel free to work with the local community board as well. So I would say reach out to us, and we would be able to help you with some of the resources we have as well. And yeah, for sure, because it doesn't, how is a school that within these times that don't have crossing guards? That's pretty absurd. But I would love to figure out ways. We have Faye, who's the chair of youth and the youth committee as well. So feel free to reach out to us as well. We can support.
Well, sorry, we have reached out. We even have our kids part of the police, youth and police roundtable. Our kids are fully advocating for our community. Our kids have been in the community board advocating as well. It's just that we need more support in terms of the police to come out there.
Okay, all right.
You know, I could just add to that on behalf of the 34th Precinct. We know exactly those boards that you're talking about, and they look ridiculous. They're menus of what you can buy off the street. My NCOs and my street patrol cops over here took 17 of those. We confiscate them, and when we see them set up, we issue a summons for that. We are working hard to make sure that that kind of stuff doesn't go on. And we do make a notification to our narcotics bureau to do a street investigation on the sale of those of weed in the Heights. and especially in the Inwood area and above Dykeman. You know, there's a lot of weed sets up there. You know, they're hard to spot out, and sometimes they're not. When we see something emerging, we tackle everything that we can from the patrol aspect, confiscating the whiteboards, summoning the double parkers in front of the weed sets. And then the more sophisticated enforcement would have to be done through observation and long-term investigations. And we leave that to our Narcotics Bureau. So it is being worked on, and it is a struggle like everything else that's going on lately. But I can tell you that it's not a lack of effort from the officers in the 3-4. They come in with these whiteboards. Some of them are 5 feet tall, 6 feet tall, and 4 feet wide. And as soon as we see them, we take them right off the street. And if we get intel, we show up right up on the scene. And usually whoever put up that whiteboard walks away from it. So we confiscate it as lost property, found property, and it goes down to our property clerk's office to be destroyed. So there is an effort to get those things off the street, and there is a long-term investigation being done by narcotics.
Thank you. Danielle?
You said Eliasad is next, right?
Yeah, Elisel? Your audio. Bro.
How's my audio now?
There it goes.
Oh, very good. So I'm just a point of clarification. I'm pretty sure that the previous questions, when she referred to these people, I'm sure that she referred to community residents. Just a point of clarification. And my questions to both, both commanders and the DA's office is there a correlation between the spike of crime between the hours of 2:30 and 6 p.m.? What does your CompStat stats show? Because we've seen in the news how right after school dismissals, there's just been more crime than usual. Before it used to be right after club hours, 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. But now it seems to be the opposite, which is like right after school. Is there anything in your plans to acknowledge and mitigate that?
Yeah, I'll touch on that, Eleazar. So when we talk about crime, and I know we have a lot of people on the call, let's unpack what we mean by actually the word crime. So typically when we're talking about crime in New York City, we're talking about index crimes, right? Which are the 7 crimes monitored by the FBI. That's how we kind of say crime is up, crime is down. So murder, rape, robbery, felony assault, burglary, grand larceny, and grand larceny auto. That kind of encompasses what we mean when we talk about crime. Now, the best law enforcement teams in the city and in the country, I think, understand that crime is an incredibly plastic sort of phenomenon. There is no blanket time when all of those crimes are occurring at once. So historically, car break-ins, right? That is a historically late at night problem. That happens later at night, typically. Shoplifting, on the opposite end of that, happens during the day. So the times of occurrences for crime change very, very frequently, and the best law enforcement teams adapt to that, right? So whatever trend we're seeing in this precinct, if it's at night, if it's during the day, whatever it is, we're going to move our resources to that location during those hours to kind of combat whatever trend we're seeing. But again, these trends are very dynamic. They change all the time. So I don't see any specific trend between those hours, other than, like I said, car break-ins, like in the 33rd precinct, which is a historical first platoon problem.
Anything from the 3-4?
I kind of know what Eli Bueno's talking about there's more kids coming out of the schools. And sometimes when you have a lot of the kids coming out of G-dubs or wheels, they do congregate a little bit. I have 2 officers that are assigned to that. They're called youth coordination officers. They are there for the dismissals from the schools that have those problems. They usually work from noon till 8 p.m. and they're out there for the dismissals, and that's helped us greatly. We also have the transits covered, 191 in St. Nick. That seems to be where some of the kids, when they're leaving George Washington High School, that go towards that train station. Presence there is important. So we know some of the areas to deter it. There are just more people out now than I've seen before, but we definitely are out there. Our presence is known. We haven't taken much violence like we used to from the kids fighting after school or one kid robbing another. But there is that dismissal time where kids get out of the schools and some of the bad kids may not mix well with some of the good kids that could become victims. So we're out there making sure that we're protecting our younger adults, and we're also trying to mentor our kids that might be steering in the wrong direction. So I understand what Eli Bueno was talking about.
All right, Danielle.
Eileen King.
Good evening, and I appreciate being able to speak with you all. My name is Eileen King. I'm board president of Mitchell-Lama Co-op, right on the top of Fort George Hill. And everything that people said about Corbin Drive, Sherman Avenue, I want to talk about that in our neighborhood. We have unique geography. We have a one-way steep hill coming straight up from Dyckman Street to St. Nicholas Avenue. It circles around to Amsterdam Avenue, and it is a mecca for drag racing, for souped up cars, for donuts, and it is relentless, relentless. It goes on, it's been going on for years. It goes right past our building. We're on the top of a hill, the noise is magnified by this. So what we're committed as members of this community to keep everybody informed, and we did. We had a meeting last night with Carmen de la Rosa. We are committed, but we need help. We need help from the 34th Precinct, and it needs to be a coordinated effect. We're asking that you look at this area. It's all night. And I appeal to the precinct. I think you have one of the best mottos in the world, to protect and serve. And I'm asking, out of my deep understanding and appreciation for that you come to protect us, the residents. It's not, I don't know about the guns, maybe there are, but this is relentless, dangerous, abusive behavior that we experience from 8 o'clock at night till 2 or 3 in the morning. And we're asking for your help, please.
Thank you.
Especially the 34th Precinct. We really, well, my question would be, would you consider thinking about doing things on a regular basis? This going here, going there, this scattered approach, it really doesn't help us who are there every night with the same problem going over and over. Packs of 15 to 40 motorbikes roaring up the hill. Maybe, Carmen, you want to add to it.
Thank you, Ms. King.
So I understand like what you're talking about, and you would like a steady officer to be at that location. It's not something that's feasible. You know, this is this command covers from 179 to 220 river to river. There are other areas that sometimes pulls us away from that type of behavior, which is a nuisance, and those are usually violent crimes. So resources get pulled depending on what's going on at that moment. I could tell you that I usually on a 4 to 12 shift, which starts at you know, in the early evening till 11 o'clock at night, we turn out about 4 to 6 cars, and these officers are going job to job, and sometimes they don't even get a meal. So they're out there, they're doing their job. Sometimes we're there, and sometimes we get pulled away. But we are seeing, we are getting positive results from it. We're making proper arrests, but there is a lot of ATVs and motorbikes out there. There's a lot of them. And there's a lot of people that really do not follow the rules of the road. I can tell you just, you know, just looking at the CompStat page, we've written over 225 oaths and Cs since the year has started, and we haven't even gotten to the summer months yet. And that's a lot of criminal court summonses. It's a significant increase from last year, which is in criminal summonses, we're 180 versus 39 from last year, which is a 361% increase. The officers are out there. The NCOs are out there as well, and they're in these locations, but they do get pulled to sometimes something in the prison that's going on that's more violent, like robberies and shootings. So I'm sorry if you can't have that officer there all the time, but we will certainly do our best to be there as much as we can and hopefully give you guys some kind of relief.
Barbara?
Yes, thank you. I studied today very carefully Governor Hochul's release on the amendments and revisions to the bail reform law. And I wanted to ask a couple questions about that. In terms of our community,
Barbara, let's focus to one question before I have to mute. One question.
Stop interrupting me, Domingo. Stop. Now, I want to.
No.
We can't.
Domingo.
Barbara, let's ask one question, and then we have.
May I ask it, please?
Thank you.
Stop.
Jesus.
I wanted to focus on the gun issue. The main thing that we see here is that the gun trafficking, which is affecting our community so much, that the felony offenses have been generally, in order to charge for a felony, it's been downgraded. For example, rather than having to have 5 guns, 3 guns would make it a felony. Or in, for example, a Class B felony in trafficking would be reduced now from 3 or more guns in a year rather than 10 guns. I won't go through all the different criteria, but generally things are generally at least cut in half. My question is, will this substantially help you reduce gun trafficking and felony gun possessions, or are these reductions in the requirement to meet criteria just window dressing? Will this really help the community?
Thank you, Barbara.
And you can apologize later, Domingo.
I'm happy to go. Look, I think it's sort of probably you had sort of two opposites of the spectrum. Like, will it have no impact or will it be kind of game changing? I think it's sort of incremental. Many of the gun trafficking cases that we do involve significant number of guns, and one of the changes was the number of guns. To bring a case to kind of make it from a trafficking from possession, and the cases that we are typically bringing are kind of well over that number. So in a lot of the cases we bring, we clear the current threshold, but certainly there will be cases where, previously it would not have been chargeable and could now be chargeable under the law. So I think it's probably, somewhere in the middle of the how you set the question up, that will be impactful in some matters. And then some of the, I'm thinking of the last case we did involved, the last, kind of significant gun trafficking involved 80 guns. Like, that would be the same, under the current old, but there will be certainly matters where we could charge them differently under the new law.
All right. Up next, we have Council Member Carmen De La Rosa.
Thank you, Domingo. I just wanted to quickly come on and show my appreciation to Community Board Chair, to your Chair, Eliasar, to our new Public Safety Chair, Domingo Esteves, to DA Bragg for all his work and the work he's leading on behalf of our borough through his office, Captain Natali, who I met with the 33rd Precinct, as well as Inspector Andrea, who I met with just a few weeks ago. I've been trying to make my rounds in this new role to try and learn how we can bring the community together to deal with some of the issues that are being brought up on this call. I think all of us want to live in safe communities, right? Key word being all all of us want to be safe when we walk down the streets of our community. We want to make sure that there is a responsiveness on nuisance issues. Like, last night I met with Aline King and some of the residents at the Inwood Towers, and understanding, right, the way that our streets are designed that sometimes are not helpful to things like reckless driving that exist, being more cognizant of some of the quality of life issues, but also understanding from meeting with both Inspector Andrea as well as Captain Natali, some of the real challenges to pursuing some of the public safety hazards that are happening in our community at this moment. And so I'm here to listen to you all, to be a vehicle to bring us all together, to try our best to continue to see improvements in the public safety across our city. These are tough times. All of us are having this conversation in the backdrop of a horrific event that occurred yesterday right in Brooklyn. And so we are living in tough times, and it's going to take unified leadership for us to move things forward. My new office is on 177th Street in Wadsworth, and we are here to listen, to serve, and to try and come to solutions that don't further the historic harm that have come to our community. As someone who grew up in this community, I've been very vocal about the tainted history of over and targeted policing in our community. And so I think that there is a balance to be stricken here. And I think that having these platforms to have this conversation will allow us to come with real solutions to the problems that we see across the community. So thank you for the opportunity. I'll be here listening and happy to chat offline if anyone else has suggestions.
Yeah, and
Thank
Carmen,
you.
I think we should do a follow-up with translation because I feel like that's something that we lack in this one. So there would have to be a much more targeted approach to our predominantly Spanish-speaking community as a follow-up.
Absolutely. I agree with you. Thank you.
Who's next?
Forgive me if I'm mispronouncing this. Ksenia Molina.
Yes, hi. My neighbor Allison Loeb had spoken earlier about drag racing on Margaret Corbin Drive, and I'm not sure her question was answered with specific and timely information. Besides the intention to put in metal barriers, what specifically is being done, and with what kind of time in terms of speed bumps and having police presence here? This is not just a nuisance for the neighborhood, but it is actually an endangerment to people who live around here, to elderly, to kids, to dogs, to cars that drive through the park on Margaret Corbin Circle and Fort Washington Avenue. In fact, it even holds up traffic. Can you give some more specifics?
Yeah, so basically, like, I'll repeat myself. We did a walkthrough with DLT. They don't normally put speed bumps in bus routes, from my understanding. That's something that really we have no control over. I would love to put speed bumps on Margaret Corbin Drive. There is a lot of police presence up in Margaret.
And who do we ask to put the speed bumps on?
We did a walkthrough with them. I mean, that's something that the Department of
Transportation
makes that final determination. We do what is called an intel report, and we do a walkthrough, and then they advise us if they're going to put a speed camera, if they're going to put a stop, a red light camera, if they're going to put speed bumps. Some of the other conditions in the 3/4 precinct were people requested speed cameras coming off of the Henry Hudson Parkway onto Riverside Drive. We did a walkthrough with that. That's something we're still waiting a response on. But I know with speed bumps, they do not put the speed bumps where there's a bus route. The presence has recently been up there, but not as frequent as I'd like, because the manpower is not here to put somebody up on Margaret Corbin all night. But the NCOs are very well aware of it. They've shifted their hours to be up there along with the NCO sergeant. And they are out there and they're trying to deter some of this behavior. This behavior used to occur behind George Washington High School. And we worked on that, and we stopped a lot of it from occurring behind there and the crowds gathering. So I feel we're going to be successful also on Margaret Corbin Drive.
All right, thank you. Mary, I know you've had your hand up for a while.
I actually have some responses to some of the questions that have come up, particularly about speed bumps and also about the drag racing on Amsterdam Avenue. Because I'm a member of the Traffic and Transportation Committee on Community Board 12. And we've worked with DOT at length, and on Amsterdam Avenue, there are some changes going to be made in terms of parking and different kinds of things to narrow that area. They're working on it from 190 all the way up through up around the circle to, where St. Nicholas and Fort George Hill connect, to try to decrease the ability for cars to speed in that area. And that work is actually going to be starting soon. We had, several walkthroughs and meetings with stakeholders in that area. And I believe there's signage going up, if it's not up already. And as far as answers about the speed bumps, I suggest if you want to speak directly to DOT, they do attend the Traffic and Transportation Committee meeting, which is on the first Monday of the month at 7 p.m. Feel free to come there, and you can address DOT directly about the speed bumps and how they come about or not. So,
and it's a virtual meeting, so similar to this, you'll be able to log into a Zoom link. If you signed up for the community board, they put out blasts almost daily with community events and highlights and important dates. So I would encourage everybody to just sign up and get those alerts, and you'll be up to date with what's going on at the community board level.
I have something else, but I know that there are a lot of other people, so I'll wait. I'll lower my hand for a bit.
Thank you so much, Mary. So we have a lot of people from the community. So right now we're going to try to keep your question specific so that we give everybody else the ability to ask questions as well. So next up, I'm assuming it's Rocio Gutierrez, Danielle?
Yes. That is correct. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I try not to butcher it, Rocio.
It's okay. So my question is regarding abandoned vehicles and paper plates in Washington Heights. So that's a concerning thing for me, because most of those cars have tinted windows, right? And I just want to know what the 33rd and 34th precinct are doing about this. We're also talking about the trucks that are parked over on Amsterdam going around Fort George Hill. Just want to know what's going on with that, because God knows what if they're trying to kidnap someone around there in the park. And that's just a concern for me. I just want to know what is being done about that, and want to hear answers.
And to answer your question briefly, I had a walkthrough as well with the DOT. There's a lot of changes coming to that Amsterdam Strip. If you're interested, just I would say leave your email as a question, and I'll forward you some of the plans that DOT has shared so far, just so you know. There's a lot of changes as far as like just it's not going to be vertical parking anymore, so there's a lot of changes coming to that particular strip. And then for the paper plates and the precincts can answer that.
All right, I'll jump in. I'll give the inspector a break. I know you mentioned up in the 3-4, but it's kind of affects both of our precincts. So yeah, paper plates and tinted windows, it's definitely something that's on our radar. We have at the 33rd precinct and the 34th has the same thing. We have a dedicated traffic team. So like my traffic team has 6 officers, 2 on every platoon, and they go out looking for these types of violations. Tinted windows, which of course a lot of times can lead to people getting struck by vehicles, right? You have blind spots, it's dangerous. That's primarily being addressed by our traffic team within the 33rd precinct. The paper plate stuff, the illegal paper plate stuff, One of the biggest things we do here at the precinct is education, because there's such a vast amount of literature on it, right? And they're coming from all different states. You have paper plates from Texas and New Jersey and all over the place. So we take the rules and the expiration dates, and we give all that information to our officers who are out on patrol so that they can enforce this appropriately. You also mentioned abandoned vehicles. It's something that I don't want to say it's personal, but I don't like it. I am big on quality of life. I don't like garbage. I don't like abandoned vehicles. There's no set precedent for going out and canvassing for these, but if I see one and I drive around all the time, I'm on the phone with my executive officer right away. Hey, we need to get rid of this abandoned car because it looks terrible. So I hope that kind of answers your questions.
You know, and I could add to that, Brian. You know, behind George Washington High School, there's a lot of these commercial vehicles that are taking up a lot of spots. Unfortunately, we can't summons those vehicles because that's not considered an area. They're actually entitled to be there. We're trying to hopefully with DOT as the transportation chair was speaking that, you know, they're going to change a little bit of that stuff behind there so that we can summons and tow some of those vehicles. As far as the paper plates, what we've done, we're trying to do tow operations as much as we can with, you know, with our tow operation through the NYPD. We just had one last Friday, and we summoned and towed 13 vehicles, and we wrote numerous paper plates. The problem with some of the paper plates is during the COVID times, which is now a year and a half past, a lot of the registrations weren't able to be re-registered, or vehicles weren't able to register. So those paper plates were extended to give people a chance. And a lot of people who have these paper plates don't realize they're expired. It's time to get your car registered, insured. So every car stop is a case by case. And we don't want to get into a habit of summonsing people who just maybe just need a little bit of education. So we're working on that. I think now that you start to see some of the vehicles being summoned and confiscated, the message gets out very clearly. Like anything else, once things get recorded and you know, people start to pay fines, the word gets out that you can't do this anymore. But we don't just decide, all right, every car stop, we're going to summons a person for a paper plate. Well, we definitely look to see if that person was aware that, look, you know, those breaks that you got during the COVID times are over. You got to get your car registered. And usually with that, we start to chip away at it. So I think that'll start to change a little bit, but it's a little bit of a process. It's just that people need to be more aware and educated about getting their cars registered.
All right, thank you so much. Next up, we have BG, Danielle.
Yes.
Yes, thanks. First of all, I want to compliment Captain Natali, because for some reason 161st Street is very quiet these days. Really amazing turnaround, I think. My question is for, I guess for DA Bragg, because during the last 2 years, we were dealing with people who are outside blasting music 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, that if confronted would probably result in a very bad thing. However, the question is, when they were confronted, are those summonses actually criminal summonses for disturbing the peace and disorderly conduct, or are they some sort of just a civil summons or something, like a small ticket or something, like a littering ticket or something?
So it would depend exactly what the write-up was. I mean, this disorderly conduct is something that would come our way. Pure just kind of noise violation. You know, I defer to the COs, but I think would be written up. You know, certainly with non-criminally.
Next up, we have Sarah Cleggett.
Hi, how are you?
Hey, how you doing, Sarah?
Good. I live up on Fort Washington, and I am truly concerned about the drag racing that happens nightly on my corner. And I know you've heard a few people talk about it, but my life specifically was in jeopardy the other day. And I want to know, like, how can we go about, like, I heard about, you know, Peter Andrea was talking about how he doesn't have the people to work up here and there's just not the manpower. But like, what can we do to make that happen? Because I have 2 young kids and we have families here. And me as a 40-year-old woman almost died. So what can we do to like help our families?
Thank you, Sarah. I think that question was towards.
Yeah, I'm clicking. So as I said, that, you know, we're spending a lot more time up on Fort George Hill. It's usually not an area where we experience high crime, and this new drag racing phenomenon just occurred here. I think we displaced it from maybe another location. I'm not sure, but the resources are going to be put in these locations. As much as I can, I will certainly dedicate the resources there. Sometimes that, you know, when I put out a certain amount of sectors and I have other more imminent dangers that are occurring throughout the precinct, such as robberies and shootings, those resources will get pulled. The NCOs are very well aware of that location. They're working their schedule around to be up there. And as I said, we're going to try to get you guys relief over there. We have used tactics in the past that have worked for us, which the ones I explained, and I think we're going to be successful with it. So it just takes, it's not going to go away overnight. It's something that's going to take a process. Once we start showing the presence up there, and once we are able to set something up that, you know, people know, look, it's not these types of behaviors not going to be acceptable. I think it'll start to go the other way. It worked for us behind G-Dubs, which is George Washington High School. It worked for us on Dykeman towards the old La Marina. It worked for us on 9th Avenue, you know, between 201 and 207. It worked at that Speedway before the Speedway actually closed. So, you know, we have tactics we do that has deterred it, but, you know, it's something that it's not going to go away overnight. And my cops will not chase a vehicle or a dirt bike or an ATV, but we'll certainly try to get some kind of relief up there. Metal barriers have worked in the past to slow it down a little bit, getting the cars to periodically go up there when the radio's not going crazy on the other side of the precinct. So hopefully we'll get you guys some relief. But as I said, you know, it's something that it's concerning to us, and it's something that's on our radar.
Thank you. So we will have DA Bragg, followed by Rosanna Diaz. Mr. Bragg?
I apologize. I have to go. So I just want to just thank everyone for the discussion, and in particular Jocelyn and Ellie, and our chief assistant Meg Reese are still on. So thanks so much for the discussion. Thanks so much for the partnership to members of the NYPD and to the community, and look forward to joining you again in the future.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rosanna Diaz.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for the meeting and having it open to the public. My question is more geared to the 33rd precinct. I do appreciate everything the 33rd does for the community, and I see they're active, you know, going around patrolling areas and everything is highly appreciated. But I have a concern. Well, other parents too have it. My child attends PS 173, which is in 173rd and for Washington, right across the street from the park, 4 blocks away from the men's shelter. And sometimes they're actually on construction right now in the school. So there's like a lot of scuffles around there's a specific like stairs that they use sometimes to, you know, do their drugs, whatever, and stuff that they want to do. And it's alarming and very concerning that they're doing this around elementary school kids. These are from 3K all the way until 5th grade. And there's also a middle school there. I'm saying besides calling the cops on them, what else as a community can we do to actually make it safer for our kids to be at school without seeing this going on?
Thank you.
So, so that sounds like it's a question not directed at the 33rd precinct, but I do want to mention a couple of quick things on this. You know, for everyone on the call right now, The NCO program is a very, very important tool that is at everyone's disposal here. And what it kind of means is that we take precincts now in New York City and we divide them into 4 sectors. And every one of those geographical sectors of the precinct has 2 officers assigned just to patrol that area. It's their expertise, it's what they know, it's what they do. Once a quarter, every year, within each of those sectors, there's a build-a-block meeting. And it is a great opportunity for all community members, for residents, to go to your build-a-block meeting and voice, what may not be an immediate concern, but more of a chronic condition to your NCO officers. And it's their job to kind of digest the problem and come up with a solution. And if you ever want to know where your meeting is, where it's going to be held next, you can just Google it. Go to Google, find my build-a-block meeting, type your address in, and it's going to tell you where it is, when it is, and you can meet with those officers and voice those concerns. So I think that kind of answers part of your question, right?
Hold up, because once they ask the question, their permission to talk is removed. So I'm assuming it answered her question. So next up, we got Karen Green.
I have 2. Can you hear me?
Yeah, let's keep it to 1 because we have a lot of people on the list at the moment that we're trying to get to.
In terms of drag racing, one thing, we've gone to sector meetings. I'm on Fort Washington Avenue. We've gone to sector meetings. We've gone to other meetings, and we keep bringing up the issue of speed cameras. There are signs on Fort Washington and on Margaret Corbin Drive about, the 20 miles an hour, and you will be photographed. There's no camera on the pole, so it's a joke. So what do we do to get speed cameras installed? That way, people who are driving and speeding would get a ticket, and other people could get it identified.
Thank you. I believe that's a DOT question, right, Mary? DOT does speed cams? All right.
Yes is the answer to that.
Yes, right. So I encourage you to visit our public safe. What is it? Transit.
Traffic and transportation.
Yeah, I encourage you to visit our traffic and transportation meetings. They happen every first Monday of the month, and you should be able to raise that concern. And I think somebody that could address that issue could give you a much more clear answer.
Domingo, can I answer part of this question?
Yes, I'm just trying to get through the list. That's why.
I know it's going to take like 20 seconds.
Okay.
It's actually controlled by the state DOT. And I think in New York City, we can only get like 50 red light cameras a year or something like that. So it's more involved than what we think. And it's not just New York City. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Brandon B.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, I have a safety related question. And I'm thinking about the Highbridge Park area, basically like 190th, 191st, down the stretch towards the dog run. I guess it's also the area behind George Washington High School. So my question is, I want to know how officials are approaching safety for the area, right? Like it's a poorly lit park, nice park. It's one of the, it's one of the precious few community resources we have, but it does feel kind of sketchy, especially during evening hours, and it's unclear if security cameras are operational, if there's any there. There's not really any patrolling force there. So I'd appreciate knowing how safety is being thought of there.
As I said, that was one of our main focuses, is behind George Washington High School. That is constantly being patrolled. And if you don't patrol it, it gets out of control. It has not been out of control. It used to be a regular night hangout with 30 or 40 cars. It looked like something out of a movie. We certainly tackled that issue, and we got to keep that maintenance. So if you see something that is brewing or dusting up, definitely let us know about it. We'll look for it. We don't see the gathering of vehicles. We don't see the disorderly crowds as we used to see. But if there's something there that we're not seeing, let us be aware of it. We'll certainly give it the proper attention as much as we can.
All right, thank you. Next up, we have Giovanni Collazo. 1 second. Giovanni.
Yes, hi, I'm Giovanna Collazo. Good
Giovanna,
evening.
I'm sorry, my apologies.
That's okay, thank you. Anyway, thank you for the time. I just wanted to comment something very abstract to something that everybody else has spoken to this evening. Regarding the children, there was a comment about things going on with kids in the afternoon, specifically in 2 different schools. One school that was mentioned was Wheels, and it was a while ago in the conversation, but as a very active parent in District 6, it's a little disconcerting to me when, there's references being made about very, very young kids as some being good and some being bad, when I think it's some having resources and some not having resources. What are some of the things that are happening? Because I've been on many, many different meetings. I'm also involved in the PA on my school. There's supposed to be all of these different after-school activities. Who are the people that are in charge of these initiatives, and who is responsible for reaching out to the families to make sure that these children are not lingering around in the street at 3:30, 4 o'clock, and 4:30 p.m. and they're actually doing something constructive?
Yeah, so that's a very complex question, because now we're talking about parents' responsibilities, school responsibilities, as well as the broader community and all of the different agencies. One thing I would say is, and what I appreciate about your question is, how do we measure if something's working? And what we're seeing right now, what we could correlate from it is, there's a lot of things that are not working when it comes to youth programming, right? Because obviously there's a spike between certain time periods. So I think this will be a great conversation to have in FACE committee regarding the current state of youth programming in our community, because that itself is a deterrent as well. If you could agree with that, Ms. Collazo.
Hello?
Yeah, you hear me?
I didn't realize that. Yes, absolutely. Listen, my son, who is in the 3rd grade, is very fortunate to go to a school that has its own, private entity, after school programs. And I realize that a lot of the other schools, I guess, are unfortunate to have these things, but I've been on many, many meetings as a person on the PA board that these things were supposed to be in the works as of the beginning of the school year. So I would like to be a part of that in some way, shape, or form, to be able to have these services extended to the other families.
So Giovanna, if you could, in the Q&A, just write something so I could send you your email and I could give you a follow-up, okay? And
that would be great.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Andrew N.
Yeah, hi. Good evening. Thanks for the opportunity. I want to follow up again on the drag racing. I know that's been a big discussion this evening, and I live also in Fort Washington, but I'm very sympathetic to the lady who discussed about the situation on Sherman Avenue. Going back to the issue of cameras, I understand that there's certain, obviously, limitations with respect to speed cameras. I know those come out of the state legislature. The city's capped to how many they can have. But as part of the deterrent, I guess my question to whether it's the Parks Department or Officer Andrea, why we can't have cameras simply pointed in that circle. We're not dealing with the most sophisticated group out there. If those cameras are deterrents, I mean, whether it's a speed camera or traffic camera, people do slow down. People do take them to heart, I think. I don't know why we can't have certain cameras that maybe act as a deterrent. These guys don't know whether they're being taped or not. I understand also that many of these vehicles may not have plates, but, if they're facial recognition, or you can start picking up identity traits on these vehicles if there's a pattern of them. So I'm curious if that's been looked at by either NYPD or the Parks Department, and to the extent DOT is involved in something like that. So that's my question.
So as far as speed cameras and those types of cameras, we don't make that determination if they go up. We'll put up a pole camera when we have an area where it's taken an increase in violence. Those cameras do not pick up, things like facial recognition. Those cameras are used for investigative resources. We can put a poll camera up there. I just don't think you're going to get results out of it. I can certainly put in a request with my agency and see if they'll let us put a poll camera. I'm not sure if I don't think we understand. We're on the same page of what you'll get the results from those poll cameras. But we can certainly put up a poll camera. Those are usually there for intel purposes when you have a high crime, high violence area. They were very successful on 207th Street. We had one on 204th Street. We have them really in locations where we take a lot of shootings and robberies. So they've helped us greatly. I think maybe you're thinking maybe an Argus camera, which we have no control over. That's Lower Manhattan Initiative. They're the ones that make determination with the Argus cameras, but I'll certainly put a request in to put a poll camera there. If it serves as a deterrent, that would be great.
All right, thank you so much. We're coming back to our last.
Yeah, Domingo.
Yes.
Domingo, just let me say, there are 750 speed cameras that we're authorized to have in New York City, and they have to be in the location of schools. And there's 1,800 schools. So it's pretty thinly distributed.
All right, thank you. So our final two questions will be Gloria, followed by Nicole.
Hello, yes, Gloria Sanchez. My name is Gloria Sanchez. I know that everything is related, guns, and drugs. And that's why we need your help more to protect our young kids. My son goes often to the park to play basketball. And I always care that my son can get hurt for the guns, addicted to drugs in any point, or join any gangs. That's why we need more your help to save our community, young people. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. And we have representation from Parks here. I don't know if you want to say anything about what's being done at the Parks level to mitigate anything the kids are being exposed to.
Yes.
Anybody from Parks? Or is that a question that you would follow up with? She's basically asking about around her child goes to play basketball and there's certain exposures that her child is facing when she attends city parks.
Hi, so can anybody see me?
Mm-hmm.
Hi, so I'm Sergeant Steve Maldonado. We cover sector pretty much all of 12 community board all of 12 all the parks that you were mentioning. For example, we cover J. Hood Wright Park, Bennett Park, all of Highbridge, Inwood Hill Park, Fort Washington, and Fort Tryon Park. It's a lot to cover. And on top of that, we also do cover everything from 125th to 155, where CB12 does start. One of the best ways to, if there's some quality of life issues happening within a park, one of the best ways to get a hold of some park enforcement to respond to a park is definitely to reach out to our central communication, which is one of the best ways to have them reach out to us over the radio, and we could assist immediately to that specific location. I can give you the number here on this form, or I could just write it into the chat room in the Q&A area.
I would say do both. There's a question specific to parks, so if you can answer with the phone number, but also give it as well, please.
All right, can you just repeat it for me one more time, the question, please?
Oh no, there's a question in the Q&A specific to parks. So I would say just type in your phone number there so that they're able to know how to reach central command, and then just provide the number if possible, please.
All right, will do. I'll provide the number in the Q&A chat room then.
Thank you.
No problem.
Domingo, I wanted to make a brief comment. Concerning the paper plates on cars, is there any way we can report, if the community can connect or report to the precincts? Because on the 311 app, there's no place to report it. And when I drove home the other day, along Nagel Avenue for 2 blocks and up Elwood and on Hillside, in that brief space, I saw 8 cars with paper plates.
All right, thank you.
So I just want to make a comment towards the paper plates. Not all of the paper plates are illegal. They all have expirations. We do send the car out when we get the 311 to check it out, and not every time do we summons a car. I think the biggest issue with the paper plates is the vehicles that are purposely not registering to come into the area to commit crimes. And those are usually vehicles that don't park in our neighborhood. They park in other areas outside of the Washington Heights area, Inwood area. So how we combat that is definitely with the checkpoints on 207 and 181st Street. And we did do that toll operation. We were very successful with it. And that presence, when we do those checkpoints and those entryways into the command, have been very effective on deterring violence, shootings, and robberies. So it is not something that's going to go away that easy. But I certainly don't think that the ones that are parking within the precinct. It's something that we got to keep working on. I think it's more of an issue of getting the awareness out there that people should register their vehicles, and that the parked vehicles that we do address, we get there and they're not expired and they actually legit paper plates. So I know it seems like there's a lot of paper plates out there. They're not all illegal. A lot of them are legally put on the vehicles, and the ones that we do confiscate are vehicles that are not from our neighborhood. They're from the Bronx, or they're from other neighborhoods other than Washington Heights, Inwood area.
Could you post on your precinct page where on 311 it should be reported?
Sure.
Nicole?
I'll make sure it's posted, and I'll make sure that when we have any type of confiscation, we put up all our confiscations on Twitter, so that you guys can follow. We took 8 motorcycles, 8 TVs this week, and we made 1 arrest.
All right, thank you. Nicole?
Yeah, can you hear me, everyone?
Yes.
Okay, my name is Nicole Rasafi. Thank you for your time. It's late, we're all tired, and so I'll make this quick. I live at the top of Fort Washington Avenue by Margaret Corbin Circle. We've discussed ad nauseum, the ATVs and this and that. I understand. The 34 does not have the staff to sit up there. I understand. I come from Harlem, so I understand you don't want to chase these guys. I understand the Department of Transportation, you have a better chance of walking to Antarctica than getting them to move about the speed bumps with the buses. I'm a pragmatic, practical person. There are 2 solutions that I see to at least mitigate this nonsense. Someone will be killed. Number 1, what is the timing in getting metal barriers? I know that's been discussed and you walk through and you've mentioned it several times, Mr. Andrea. And believe me, I love the 34. So I love the 3-4. So thank you. But what is the timing? How quickly can we get those in? It's not rocket science. Number 2, and this goes to the Parks Department. There was somebody putting in poles. Can we gate off Margaret Corbin Drive so they can't drag race up and down that at night? When is that happening? The guy who was putting them in told me that's the plan. That, again, is not rocket science. I want practical, easy solutions.
Yeah, but we also have to check our tone and not try to be condescending towards people either.
I'm not being condescending.
I understand.
I'm
understand the frustration, but let's just have a conducive conversation where we all engage.
Those are my 2 questions. What is timing for metal barriers and for the gates at Margaret Corbin?
So I put in the request for the metal barriers. I'm waiting to hear back from my overhead. As soon as we get the green light and they send it over to us, we'll have them distributed. So I'm hoping within the next week or so that I can get that up there. And also I have to make sure that other residents in the community aren't going to oppose it. So that's another issue that we have. A lot of people want something done, and then some people want it done their way and not the practical way. These are the tools that we have, and I hope to get that stuff out to you guys and do my best to relieve you guys over there.
Yeah. And once again, this is just the first of many. Today was just the initial conversation to be able to engage and as a community try to figure out how we could address a lot of the issues, a lot of situations that are happening within our community. Like I said, there's a lot of frustration, but together and understanding what's going on, we could address a lot of it without necessarily letting our emotions get the best of us. I know
Domingo, years ago, Margaret Corbin was gated, and the Met had to.
I understand.
demanded it be
I understand that, but that's a conversation that folks need to have with parks. What we're trying to do here is try to figure out what we could do, initiate conversations that never were had before, bringing stakeholders that were never together, and I think we accomplished that today. Our next step is to be clear. If folks want follow-ups, if there were questions that were not answered, I encourage you all to come to our next public safety meeting, which is when, Barbara? You're muted, Barbara.
The point was the treasures.
When is our next public safety meeting, Barbara?
Next May.
Yeah. When in May?
The first Thursday.
The first Wednesday, Barbara.
So always change to Wednesday. Okay, first
No,
Wednesday.
No, it's not.
All right, first Wednesday.
All right,
but the
so
point I'm making, the cloisters didn't allow Margaret Corbin to be gated because of the treasures at the cloisters.
Okay, perfect. So I want to thank both commanding officers, the DA and his staff for coming by and joining us and engaging us in this dialogue. We will have follow-up questions. So hopefully a lot of the questions that were answered, we will be following up at the committee level. So just inform the officers, sergeants, lieutenants that join us during those meetings to come with updates so we could routinely make sure that we follow up on what's not only what's being promised, but what's being worked on. Carmen, is there anything you want to add on before we close? Well, once, twice. Eliasel?
No, Domingo, just thank you. There's some follow-up to some of the stuff. There are initiatives that will be coming out of our office, and so I'm looking forward to continuing the conversation. And I apologize, my dog is going crazy.
Yes, so this is just the first of many. We will have more. We will have more with interpreters to be able to broaden the access for individuals of our community. But just bear with us. This is the first of many to come, and we will keep engaging our electeds, our city agencies, to be able to make this the best we can. Eliasel, chair of the board.
Yeah, just want to say thanks again, Carmen. I didn't get to say thank you when I first say my introductory words. So I just, Domingo, again, just the open dialogue is necessary, and I think.
Eliasel, you're having audio problems. I personally would also like to thank Jocelyn Minaya from the DA's office for being a great thought partner and being present, making sure that we all work together. At the end of the day, the goal is to address the issues as a community. In the past, what's happened is certain sectors of the community dictated what the narrative is. What we're doing here is making sure that all our narratives are together and we're able to address stuff together as a community. So I want to thank you all. Jocelyn, I don't know if you will have some closing words before
I just want to thank Ellie as well, my partner up here in the Washington Heights office. And, that's what we do. That's what we're here for. And we're going to continue doing it, Domingo. So thank you for hosting this, Eliasar, community board members, and the community for joining us. And of course, our esteemed council member, De La Rosa. And my first assistant, Meg Reese, she stuck around with us. So I appreciate, the opportunity to have our office present for this conversation. And we look forward to continuing.
Is there any closing words from the commanders?
I just want to say thank you for this open dialogue tonight. And, you know, I encourage people to go there, build the blocks. I encourage them to come to community council meetings. I'm there at all the community council meetings. And, you know, I just hope by the next time we meet at a communal council meeting or to build a block, some of your issues have been resolved or at least on their way.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I'll just echo the inspector's sentiments there. Thank you for doing this. I think it's incredibly helpful. You know, we started out the meeting talking about Washington Heights and data and everything going on here. And, you know, there's a lot of very, very good things going on in this community so far this year. And the data supports that. There's a lot more work to be done. But this team, you know, community board, the DA's office, Jocelyn, everyone, you know, involved in reducing crime and improving quality of life in the 33rd precinct has been doing an excellent job, and we're going to continue to do so. Community council meeting this month, 28th, 6:30 right here at the 33rd precinct. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank everybody for participating. If there's any questions, I put my, before we close the Zoom, I put my email in some of the answers. So just check it out. I know that there was a lot between the Q&A and the person who raised their hands to get their questions answered. That's why it's so important to review the flyer. The flyer had a portion where anybody who was going to have questions, we encouraged everybody to send their questions prior so we could address as many as we can. So we'll keep trying to answer as many questions as possible. But at the end of the day, thank you all for joining us, and hope to see you in our next our general board meeting at the end of the month and our committee meetings next month. Thank you.
Thank you, Domingo.
Thank you, Domingo.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much.